Stephen's son and my stepchild, Ryan, has always hurled verbal abuse at me. Thinking I mustn't upset Stephen, I've endured it all alone. One day, I returned to my hometown by plane. Stephen, whom I'd asked to pick me up, got held up with overtime work, and I was in a bind when Ryan offered to come instead. However, upon arriving at the airport, Ryan, to whom I was about to express my gratitude, blurted out, "Actually, I can't do this." "What?" "Just seeing your face makes me nauseous. Breathing the same air feels like it'll lead to an accident. The thought of my car smelling like a woman is unbearable," he said with a half smile, barraging me. "If you buy me a new car, then maybe I'd let you ride, but you don't have that kind of money, do you? You're just Dad's parasite," Ryan said with a nasty grin. "Parasites from others can't ride. Haha. Walk home. That'll take you 3 hours. Haha." All right. As Ryan's back receded, a fierce anger welled up in me. "Just you watch. I'll show you what happens when you mock me." I'm Linda, a housewife married to Stephen through work, and this year marks our 10th anniversary. We met when I was transferred from the accounting department to sales administration, where Stephen worked. As we worked together, we grew close, and after 2 years of dating, he proposed. I was over the moon, but I hesitated to immediately accept. Because Stephen was a widower, with a young child from his previous marriage, a single father. He'd been raising Ryan with the help of his parents. I carefully bridged the gap by dining out with Ryan, visiting amusement parks, and watching anime movies together. Ryan was a taciturn and sullen child, unbelievably different from his kind and generous father. He was utterly charmless. But expecting a pubescent boy to shower his new mom with affection is undoubtedly a tall order. If Ryan rejected me, we agreed to call off the marriage. Surprisingly, Ryan accepted me. "I don't dislike the new mom," he said with a shy smile. Thus, Stephen and I became husband and wife, and our life as a trio began. Little did we know problems were just around the corner. After a while, Stephen approached me with a guilt-ridden suggestion. "Linda, would it be difficult to switch to part-time work?" "It should be fine, but why?" "Well, Ryan says he feels lonely being alone till evening. He wishes for at least you to come home early." I had known since our dating days that Ryan had recently stopped going to school. He would participate in events, but spent the rest of his time at home. When asked, Ryan would clam up, and neither his friends nor his teacher could pinpoint the cause. Stephen and I delved into books about absenteeism, visited parks, and studied how to best support our child as parents. Hoping he might return to school one day, we awaited quietly, but Ryan remained homebound, even after starting middle school. "It's hardest on him. He might suddenly find it in himself to go." Stephen reassured me, and we decided to support him warmly. The suggestion to work part-time came just then. I consulted my workplace and was allowed to switch from full-time to part-time. Being alone at home might feel isolating, as if left behind by the world. Yet Ryan's attitude towards me drastically changed around this time. As if waiting for my return, he would come down to the kitchen daily to complain. "What's at today's lunch? Relying on frozen food or leftovers from last night's dinner? How lazy can you get? Normally, you'd make something fresh, right?" "I'm sorry, I didn't have time. Oh, how about I make us some sandwiches? That way you can eat right away." "See, that's lazy again. You could come back during your lunch break to make it. I want something freshly made." Stunned by his response, Ryan flashed a spiteful smile. "A mother should at least do that much." Understood. The round trip to work by car took 40 minutes. Lunch break was an hour. Even if I prepared in advance, making lunch would leave no time to eat my own. Yet thinking it would make Ryan happy, I sacrificed my break to continue making his lunches. Instead of showing gratitude, Ryan frequently criticized me. "Why can't you make the fried rice tastier? It's nothing like the restaurants." "Well, they're professionals," I muttered, only for Ryan to snap at my excuse. "There you go again, making excuses. Dad has to work for his money, unlike you, who just lives off him. If you can't even do household chores properly, what are you good for?" "Right, I'm sorry." As I hung my head, Ryan spread a triumphant grin. Ryan also nitpicked about the cleaning and the way I folded laundry, following me around as I vacuumed, making a fuss over a single strand of hair in the corner of the hallway, and sneering at the slightest wrinkle on a shirt. "Is this your idea of doing housework? You're too lazy because Dad is too kind. Do it properly." I bit my lip. Even though he never lifts a finger to help around the house, he's full of complaints whenever he opens his mouth. Seeing me silent, Ryan frowned in displeasure. "What's with that face? If you have a complaint, tell Dad. I'll tell him you've been verbally abusing me." Ryan acts all high and mighty when it's just the two of us, but puts on a facade in front of Stephen. He never behaves like this in front of him. Quiet and docile, far from it. Ryan is sinister and twisted. My disdain for Ryan grew day by day. With such a character, his future worried me until I realized something. Ryan's way of speaking is exactly like my father-in-law Daniel's and mother-in-law Nancy's. From the beginning of our marriage, Daniel and Nancy disliked me. Once, after we were married, we went out to eat with Daniel and Nancy. I gently reprimanded Ryan for eating noisily. When Stephen went to the bathroom and was out of sight, Daniel and Nancy yelled at me. "You're not Ryan's mother, you're just a wife. How dare you scold Ryan?" "It's too early for you to be voicing opinions to Stephen and Ryan. Just silently take care of these kids." I remember Ryan smirking beside the ranting Nancy. After Ryan's mother passed away, I heard that Daniel and Nancy, busy with work, frequently visited to take care of young Ryan. It was inevitable for Ryan to be influenced by Daniel and Nancy's thoughts. Could it be that he also resorts to verbal abuse when he fights with his friends? Is his inability to fit in the reason he can't go to school? Though I harbored these doubts, a significant truth came to light. Ryan isn't unable to go to school. He just doesn't want to go, so he doesn't go. This realization came from overhearing a conversation between Ryan and a friend. One day I left work early due to a fever, but thinking I still had to make lunch for Ryan, I prepared pasta and brought it to his room. As I was about to knock, I overheard a conversation through the door. "While the others are stuck listening to boring classes, I'll level up and get stronger. Gotta grab some good items." Listening in, Ryan burst into laughter. "I'm gonna have Dad buy me a new console and the latest game release. He thinks I'm distracting myself from the loneliness of not going to school by playing games. Thinking I'm skipping school to play games. What an idiot." Unaware I was listening, Ryan continued his cheerful conversation. "My mother? She's useful for doing various chores, plus I could take my anger out on her when I'm pissed. Glad she married into the family." I felt dizzy. Looking back, Ryan's room was always filled with the sound effects of games. I couldn't believe he was skipping school just to play games. Stephen limits Ryan's gaming time each day, so by the time Stephen comes home, Ryan's always watching TV in the living room, pretending to adhere to the rules. Certainly, Daniel and Nancy must have allowed Ryan to play games to his heart's content from a young age, making it a habit. When I burst open the door to Ryan's room, he turned around with a startled look and hurriedly ended the call. "Don't eavesdrop," Ryan snapped at me, but I spoke to him as calmly as I could. "Why don't you talk about the real issue? Stephen's really worried, thinking something happened at school." Ryan glared at me. "Shut up. Leave me alone. Dad's so serious, he'll definitely say no more games." "If you won't tell him, I will." With anger on full display, Ryan seemed to suddenly have an idea, looked at me and smirked. Fiddling with his phone, he thrust it at me proudly. "Think you can defy me? I'll tell Dad you've been cheating." I was shocked by the screen displayed. There was a photo of me dining at a high-end restaurant with a male acquaintance. "I secretly followed you that day. You were meeting your lover, weren't you?" I pondered my next move. If Ryan showed this to Stephen and explained his thoughts, it could create a rift between father and son. "I haven't done anything to betray Stephen." "Liar. I see through everything." Sighing, I shrugged. "All right, I won't say anything myself, but you should find a time to talk. Tell him you don't want to go to school, not that you can't." Despite my heartfelt words, it seemed to have no impact on Ryan. Since then, Ryan's bullying intensified. He either blatantly ignored me or showered me with sarcasm. After starting middle school, Ryan's attitude towards me became strictly one of these two. "A parasite with nothing in her head but housework. You married Dad for his money, didn't you? Women have it easy. Marry a rich guy and you could eat and nap all day, living a life of leisure. Using Dad's salary to cheat, how low can you get? Who do you think allows you to live in this house? Such a brazen person." When Ryan started middle school, we sold our condo and moved to a house in the suburbs, hoping for a change in his temperament. However, our hopes were dashed. Ultimately, Ryan barely attended middle school, and after graduating, opted for correspondence high school. Afterward, he didn't seek employment but shifted to part-time work. In reality, he lived a carefree life, working part-time gigs when he felt like it. Initially desperate to bond with Ryan, I've recently given up. Even when verbally abused in Stephen's absence, I've developed the patience to ignore it. One day, Stephen came home from work and shared, "Ryan's been wanting to get his driver's license. I told him to save his part-time earnings for it." Having something to strive for might motivate him to work harder. Maybe he'll eventually get a regular job. A few days after we discussed these hopes, Nancy unexpectedly arrived, beaming, and told Stephen, "I've sorted out Ryan's driving school paperwork." "What?" "Once he gets his license, I'll buy him a new car. Can't wait." "Stop doing things on your own. I told him to pay with his part-time earnings." Stephen, unusually raising his voice, was calmly countered by Nancy. "Ryan earns so little, poor thing. We have to help him." Seemingly resigned, Stephen didn't protest further against Nancy. As expected, Ryan skipped part-time work to attend driving school, got his license, and Nancy bought him a luxury car, which he used to show off to his friends. Like Stephen, I lost the will to advise Nancy or Ryan, secretly hoping only for no traffic accidents. When Ryan got used to driving, I was attending a friend's wedding and headed to my hometown by plane. On my way back, I received a text from Stephen. "Sorry, something came up at work. I'm stuck with overtime, not sure when I can leave." I'm not confident driving. Having trouble with long drives from the city airport, I had asked Stephen for pickups. "It's okay, I'll catch a cab," I replied. "After the last bus, walking from the station's too far." Unexpectedly, Stephen replied, "Ryan will pick you up from the airport. You're not fond of cabs, right?" I pondered for a moment. Ryan's coming to pick me up? Pleasing, yet the thought of being alone in a car with him was suffocating. "Ryan wants to show off his driving skills," Stephen texted. I chuckled. Maybe he does have his charming points. "Guess I'll take up the offer then." "I think that'll be better. I'll tell Ryan." Soon after, a text from Ryan arrived. "Wait in the lobby." Though blunt, the message was a pleasant surprise. Hoping this might bridge some distance between us, I harbored a secret hope. Eventually, the plane landed at the airport. After completing the procedures, I headed to the lobby, pulling my suitcase. Seeing Ryan from a distance as I waited on a chair, I stood up. "Thanks for coming to pick me up," I said, and Ryan responded with a smirk. "Actually, I can't do this." "What?" I hesitantly asked. "Is it because you drive roughly? I'm not good at driving either, so I don't mind." "It's not that, idiot." Ryan twisted his mouth. "Just looking at your face makes me nauseous. If I breathe the same air as you, feels like I'll crash. I can't stand the thought of my precious car smelling like a woman, either." He ranted while looking at my confused face. "If you buy me a new car, then maybe I'd let you ride, but that's impossible, right? You're just Dad's parasite," Ryan said with a disgusting smile. "Parasites from others can't ride. Huh. Walk home. It'll take you 3 hours. I stared at Ryan's face. It took me a while to comprehend his words. "Hey, did you get that? Is your brain okay?" "All right." "As for Dad, don't tell him. Just say you walked home for exercise. Maybe you'll lose some weight. Be grateful to me." Laughing joyfully, Ryan walked away. Watching his receding back, intense anger welled up inside me. I'd always endured his behavior, worrying that exposing Ryan's true nature would sadden Stephen or damage their father-son relationship. But I've reached my limit. Just you watch. I'll show you what happens when you mock me. Walking home for 3 hours in the middle of the night is too much. Despite my dislike, I decided to take a cab. About 10 minutes into my walk to the taxi stand, my phone rang. Checking, it was Ryan. Ignoring it and continuing to walk, the call went to voicemail. Then he called again immediately. After several persistent calls, I finally gave in and answered. "Yes." "Don't ignore me. Answer quickly." "What? If it's nothing, I'm hanging up." "What did you tell Dad?" Ryan sounded almost hysterical. It seemed he had seriously angered Stephen. "I just told him about your behavior." "Stop meddling. Where are you?" "I'm heading to the taxi stand." "Then wait there. I'm coming to pick you up." "There's no need to strain yourself." Oh, shucks, he hung up. Meeting Ryan was awkward, but going home alone seemed like it would only worsen the situation. Reluctantly, I waited at the taxi stand and went home with Ryan. For some reason, Daniel's car was in the parking lot. Puzzled by his presence at this hour, I entered the house to find Stephen greeting me at the entrance. His kind smile was comforting. "Linda, welcome back." "Hi, is Daniel here?" "I called our parents over. I know you're tired, but after you've put your bags in the bedroom, could you come to the living room? I'd like to have a family meeting with our parents involved." A resolute determination was felt from Stephen's stern face. After placing the suitcase in the bedroom and changing into home clothes, I went to the living room, where Daniel and Nancy were waiting for me. Immediately, Nancy began to scold loudly. "How dare you summon elderly parents at such an hour? It must have been Linda who ordered Stephen around. Such an ill-mannered woman."
Exactly. There are far better choices at work. Why on earth did you marry her? Stephen, how long are you planning to be under her thumb?
Stephen's complexion changed at Daniel and Nancy's abusive words. Thinking back, Daniel and Nancy also behaved submissively in front of Stephen. This was the first time they had berated me.
Please stop speaking ill of Linda,
Stephen said in a restrained tone, staring down Daniel and Nancy.
I apologize for calling you so late, but I really wanted to talk tonight.
Facing Ryan, Daniel, and Nancy, Stephen and I sat on the couch, starting our talk with grim expressions.
Earlier, when I asked Ryan to pick up Linda from the airport, he immediately agreed. But then he quickly messaged. Linda said she'll take a cab home. That's really what she said. When I called Linda, she said she was left stranded at the airport.
What? You're upset over that? Nancy laughed, shaking her shoulders.
She could have walked home. She would have arrived by morning. Exactly. The nerve of a wife asking for a pickup. Who does she think she is?
As Ryan and the three nodded in agreement, Stephen's eyes narrowed. Placing his phone quietly on the living room table, Stephen said in a firm voice,
The main issue is this image sent by Linda.
Daniel, Nancy, and Ryan all paled as they looked at the cell phone.
What the heck?
Looking helplessly at Daniel and Nancy, they turned away uncomfortably, choosing silence. Displayed on Stephen's cell phone were messages exchanged between Ryan, Daniel, and Nancy.
Ryan, I heard you can't go to school from Stephen. Are you feeling unwell somewhere?
Grandpa, Grandma, don't worry. It's not that I can't go to school. I just don't want to. You know, if I go to school, I can't play games, right?
Oh, I thought you were struggling because you're sensitive and it's hard being around noisy teachers and friends.
Keep it a secret from Dad, and I want to spend money on games, but I don't have enough allowance.
Would $10K be enough for now? I'll transfer it to your account without Stephen knowing.
Kids want to play, right? Go ahead. Relax at home as much as you like.
That's very understanding of you. Thanks, Grandpa and Grandma.
Stephen's expression turned furious, and Daniel, Nancy, and Ryan remained silent. I found this displayed on Ryan's cell phone screen left in the living room a few years ago. I took a photo, intending to discuss it with Stephen, but I hesitated and left it as is.
It's because I was young. I didn't lock it. Snooping through someone's cell phone like that is the lowest.
That's right. What an impolite woman.
Who's being impolite here?
Stephen shouted, glaring at Daniel and Nancy with anger and frustration.
Dad, Mom, why did you give Ryan such a large sum without consulting me?
Because he said to keep it a secret from you. Daniel and Nancy sulked.
Isn't it fine to give a grandchild some allowance?
Yes, that's right. And the problem is Linda snooping on Ryan's cell phone when she's a total stranger. Outraged, Daniel and Nancy were met with my angry retort. Oh, is that so? Then let's report Ryan for borrowing money without permission from a stranger. Huh? I took the cell phone again, showing a different image. It was a credit card statement I'd saved in a photo before. Ryan was the only one showing panic among those who looked puzzled.
$5K on game charges? Linda, this is...
Yes, it's the money Ryan borrowed without asking from me.
Don't lie. Ryan would never do something like that.
Nancy, who had screamed, hurriedly covered her mouth. Seeing Ryan pale, she seemed to realize. I was shocked to see almost no balance left, even though I'd put money in the account. I shrugged. When I checked the statement, it was used up to the limit for game content. Ryan, you'd registered my card number for online game payments without permission.
Household items and such are bought with Linda's card. To make it readily usable, it's kept in the bedroom drawer with a note of the PIN, because I tend to forget the numbers.
Stephen added. It never crossed my mind that Ryan would use it without permission. But why do such a thing when it's bound to be discovered immediately?
Shut up, it's fine. We're family, aren't we?
Ryan retorted in frustration. Daniel and Nancy fought back.
Stingy, aren't we? It's just $5K. It's not a big deal. Yeah, don't complain being just the son's wife. It's because you spoil him like this that Ryan has become so selfish.
Stephen raised his voice. Standing up abruptly as if he couldn't stand it anymore, he glared at Daniel, Nancy, and Ryan.
I appreciate that you looked after Ryan when he was young and I was busy with work, but it's absurd to give him a large sum of money and let him do whatever he wants. Ryan, you too. Using your parents' money without any remorse.
Daniel, Nancy, and Ryan exchanged looks. Their lips pursed in dissatisfaction.
It's unreasonable to complain about spoiling our grandson. If there's a problem with Ryan's upbringing, it's the mother's fault. Children grow up imitating their mother. It's Linda's upbringing that's lacking. That's right, Linda. Take responsibility. Pointed at by Daniel, I was speechless, beyond anger. I could only laugh. My responsibility? Because it's the truth. Suddenly, Stephen's eyes widened, his face turning terrifying as he clenched his fists. Both of you, how dare you say such irresponsible things? Linda married me, a man with a child, on her first marriage. What do you think she's prepared for to come into this house? Stephen. Everyone should be more grateful to Linda. Then Ryan, who had been silent, looked up as if he had an idea, speaking to Stephen with a malicious grin. Dad, you really trust Linda, huh? Of course. Stephen frowned, and Ryan, with a full smile, announced, This woman has been cheating. No, maybe she still is. Huh? Cheating? I knew it. I always thought she was awful. Daniel and Nancy were excited. Do you have proof? Of course, just wait. Ryan, with a dubious look from Stephen, scrolled through his cell phone, hastily searching for the supposed evidence photos. Ah, found it. Let's see. Daniel and Nancy, looking pleased, peered into the screen. I'm smart. I kept the photos from that time. Good job, Ryan. Daniel spoke to Stephen as if soothing an unruly child. You've woken up now, right? Divorce this woman quickly. If you want a wife as a housekeeper, you can find another. Yes, she should be grateful just to be housed here, and yet she dares to act like Ryan's mother. How annoying. Right, you're just leeching off Dad, and yet you have the nerve to cheat. How shameless. Ryan also spat out angrily. Dad, you're too blind. Next time you marry, choose someone younger, prettier, and more obedient. 40 years old with an average face. Gee, sorry for being defiant. Anger boiled within me. So get out, cheater. This is mine and Dad's house. I haven't cheated. Looking up at Stephen, I said that, and he nodded as if he understood. After peeking at Ryan's phone, he met my gaze and sighed deeply. Ryan, you followed Linda? Yeah, I did. She dressed up and went out, all for no good reason. It was a dinner with a friend. She does once a year. Yeah, cheating with a man. Wait, what? Surprised, Ryan, Daniel, and Nancy faced Stephen's grim expression. January 4th at a restaurant in front of the station. He's a longtime friend of mine and Linda's college classmate coming back from overseas duty for Christmas. So we decided to have a meal together. Only he and I are in this photo, but after this, Stephen, who'd finished work, joined us. See, the table's set for 4, right? Oh, true. Daniel and Nancy, scrutinizing the cell phone screen, looked towards Ryan. Oh, really? Now that you mention it, I sort of recognize this person. Oh, he's Dad's friend. Ryan scratched his head and laughed it off with a ha-ha. Yet it seemed he had not run out of complaints about me, pointing at me and hurling more insults. But there's no denying this woman is living off Dad. He's even paying the mortgage. Nancy jumped on the bandwagon. Exactly, and yet she acts all high and mighty. Who does she think she is? I've never once thought of you as my mother. Actually wanted to oppose the marriage, but you forced your way into our home. No, you accepted me, and that's why we got married. What are you even saying now? It's obvious she married Stephen for his money. Wake up, Stephen. You're being deceived. Stephen, shaking off Nancy's pleading, stated firmly. Ryan, you said you wanted me home early, so I switched to part-time, remember? Huh? Did I say that? I feel guilty for leaving all the household chores to Linda while I'm caught up in work. And you have no right to talk, not working much and just playing games all day at home. Stephen looked at Ryan and pointed out sternly. In fact, it's thanks to Linda that we can live in a spacious house. Be grateful to Linda. Huh? This house was bought by Linda. Ryan was shocked. What do you mean? Linda suggested that if Ryan, who's not attending school, is going to stay home, a house in the suburbs would be better than a condo near the station for you to feel more at ease. Stephen turned to Ryan, who was at a loss for words. Linda asked for it. She didn't want you to feel uncomfortable, so she wanted it kept a secret from you. But I should have told you sooner. Ryan turned pale. I contribute my salary too, so it's mine and Linda's house. By the way, Ryan, since you started working, have you contributed even $1 towards living expenses? Hey, don't tell Ryan to leave, okay? Daniel, Nancy, and Ryan were flustered. Linda, the cheating was just a misunderstanding, and we didn't know this house was bought by you, right, Ryan? Yeah, if it's a house you bought, then there's no need for me to leave. Ryan smiled at me, ingratiatingly. Let's forget what happened and get along. Mom, we're family after all, so you'll forgive me, right? Looking forward to living together. Ryan, trying to cozy up to me, finally infuriated Stephen. How dare you say such things, shameless! At Stephen's roar, Daniel, Nancy, and Ryan trembled. If Dad, Mom, you care so much about Ryan, why don't you live together? I'm done taking care of him. As of today, our ties are severed. Don't ever show your face again. How cold, Stephen. You used to be so kind. But Linda has changed you completely. Such a heartless father. Stephen glanced at the lamenting Daniel and Nancy with a cold look. Fine. Ryan, come to our house. From today, let's live together. Dad, if you're cold to your precious here, you'll regret it for sure. Complaining, Daniel, Nancy, and Ryan left our house. Living with them, Daniel and Nancy seemed to grow wary of Ryan's selfishness. Despite living with elderly Daniel and Nancy, he never helped with housework. He spent more time playing games than working, and when his part-time earnings ran out, he'd beg for pocket money from Daniel and Nancy, who lived on their pension. Stephen, could you take Ryan back? I think parents should take care of their children. If things go on like this, our pension and savings will be eaten up by Ryan. Please take him back. Later, Daniel and Nancy called begging, but Stephen immediately blocked their number. And there were no signs of the $5,000 that Ryan had spent of mine returning after 6 months. When I contacted Ryan, his reply was appalling. Well, we're family, it's not a crime, you know. It might not be a crime, but I can sue you in court. Huh? You didn't know that? If you don't pay, I'll take you to court. Perhaps my threat worked, because the next day $5,000 was transferred to my account. Obviously, Ryan had no such money, so I'm sure Daniel and Nancy had covered for him. However, Ryan had no intention of repaying them and continued to laze around at his grandparents' house without working. This caused the relationship between Daniel, Nancy, and Ryan to worsen further. Lately, Daniel and Ryan were fighting every day, causing such a disturbance that the neighbors frequently called the police, and now the family was considered a nuisance in the neighborhood. A month after Stephen kicked Ryan out, Stephen and I were celebrating our 10th wedding anniversary at the restaurant where he proposed, sharing a bottle of wine. I'm sorry, Linda. I made you suffer for so long. Stephen, are you still apologizing? It's okay now. I smiled and Stephen spoke in a frail voice. I had a feeling that Ryan and my parents didn't think highly of you. I optimistically thought they'd come around eventually. I never imagined they would hurl such awful insults. Well, thanks to you, Stephen, standing by me, my frustration was cleared. Thank you. As I thanked him with a smile, Stephen quickly retorted. Of course, I should have cut ties with him sooner. I wanted to get along with your important relatives, so it's a shame. What are you talking about, Linda? You're much more important. Stephen's gentle voice and smile warmed my heart. I felt grateful all over again for marrying this man. Though we never managed to understand Ryan, Daniel, or Nancy fully, I was determined to grow old together with Stephen.